Hello everyone, in this video we will create a serverless web application using AWS services. Let me just give you a quick overview of what will happen when users access our contact form. So user can interact with our application through a web browser. Then the user's request will be first directed to Amazon S3 where our static website or client-side code is hosted. Next, the request is routed to API Gateway. API Gateway is going to manage the requests and trigger Lambda functions. As API Gateway will trigger our AWS Lambda function, Lambda will execute our backend logic, storing and retrieving data from DynamoDB. Dynamo will be used for storing users' information. Cloud IMA is going to manage access to AWS resources, ensuring that each service can only access what it needs to perform its function. And throughout this process, the Amazon CloudWatch is going to monitor our application. It is going to provide us the insights. It is going to collect and track metrics and log all the activities. So let's get started and build our serverless application. Let's start by creating a static website. For that, open the terminal and in here create a new project and name it AWS-serverless-app or call it whatever you want. Then navigate into your project and inside it let's create another folder named S3 static site or name it whatever you want it. Let's create another folder for Lambda function and name it as lambda-function. So basically inside our project we have two another folders named S3 static site which will contain our website code, and then we have another folder named lambda function that is going to contain lambda function. And now let's open this project into VS Code, and here we have our project open into VS Code. So inside this S3 static site we are going to create all of the files that we need. So follow along with me. And then in Lambda function, we will need just one file that is going to be index.js. And now we will start by creating our contact form and index.html file present in this folder. So in this form, we have gave it a title as contact form for AWS. Then we have a div inside which we have a heading of contact form. Then we have form inside it with various fields for name, email, subject and message. Each of these fields are required, meaning user must fill them out before submitting the form. Here we also link our file to CSS file for styling, and then down here we have linked to the JavaScript file to handle form submission. So this is all of the code that we need for index.html file. Next, open the style.css file, and in here we are going to bring all of the styles that are index.html or other files need. So these are the style that we need for body, and then for container we have set its width to 500 pixel and all of the stylings that we need. For heading 1 and a paragraph we have aligned the text to center, and if it is the error.html file we are going to show that error in red color, and for label present in the form we have displayed it to block, and this is the styling for text area and inputs and for button. I have also provided you the GitHub repository, so do not worry if you miss something over here. You can check that repository and then follow along with me. The link for the GitHub repository is in the description. Next, we are going to work with index.js file which is going to handle the form submission. In this file, we bring in the element by ID contact-form, and then we have an add event listener to the form element to listen for form submission event. We also prevent the form's default submission behavior. We have then declared 4 variables which are going to bring in the name, email, subject and message from the input elements present into our index.html file. And And with the help of trim method, we are also removing any leading or trailing white spaces. We are then validating the form inputs. This is going to check if all the fields are filled and if the email address is in the correct format using regular expression. And if something is missing, we are going to say please fill in all the fields with valid inputs. And once the validation is successful, we are preparing the form data to be sent to our backend. This involves basically creating a JSON object with the user's input. And now we will look at how we send the form data to our backend. We are going to have a function named submit form, which is going to take in the form data as a parameter, and inside it we make a post request to our API endpoint, which is going to be managed by AWS API Gateway. We will bring in this URL later. For now, let's just keep moving. If the request is successful, we are going to redirect the user to success page. If it fails, we are going to redirect the user to fail.html file. And if there are any errors during all of these process, we are going to redirect the user to fail.html file. Here's how our backend process the form submission. The API gateway receives the form data and it is going to trigger the Lambda function, which we will create in a matter of moment. This Lambda function will contain all the logic to process the form data, and it will include storing the data in DynamoDB. Now we will focus on AWS Lambda function that processes the form submission and stores the data in DynamoDB. So for that, let's close all of this file and then open this lambda-function folder and this index.js file. We are going to bring in our Lambda function in index.js file. In this file, first off, we will start by importing the AWS SDK, and we are setting up the DynamoDB document client. This client will allow us to interact with DynamoDB more easily. We are also importing the UUID library to generate unique IDs for each form submission. Then we have the main function exports.handler. This is going to be our Lambda function's entry point. This function is going to be triggered by API gateway when a user submits the contact form. We are also logging the raw input data to CloudWatch to help us debug. We then extract the user's name, email, subject and message from the event object and store them in the form data object. We then create an item object which is going to include a unique submission ID, and if the form is submitted successfully, we are going to return the status code of 200 and a message saying form submitted successfully. But if there are any errors, we are going to respond with a status code 500 and a message error submitting the form. Then we will have another function that is store form data, that is going to take the item object and store it in DynamoDB table, and we are going to replace this DB table name once we have created our Dynamo table. Okay, and to generate the unique ID, we have another function named generate UUID. It is going to generate a unique ID for each form submission. This is going to ensure that each entry in our Dynamo table is unique. So that is what we have for index.js file, or basically you can say Lambda functions. And now the next thing we are yet to do is we are yet to bring in this AWS-SDK package. So for that, let's open the terminal, and then in the terminal navigate into the Lambda function directory. And then over here, we have to run the command npm init-y to initialize this project as a Node.js. Then let's hit enter. And after it is done, you will see that we have package.json file generated into this folder. And after that, let's run the command npm I aws-sdk to bring in this package, and it is done installing the package. And then in the package.json file, you will see in dependency that you have AWS-SDK package. And now once we are done with the code that we need for both of these folders, let's work with different AWS services. Now let's create S3 bucket. This bucket will be publicly accessible to the users so that they can access our contact form. So for that, open the web browser and navigate to the AWS Management Console and log in with your credentials. After you are done logging in, then here in this search bar, you have to search for S3 and then select this S3 from the drop down list. And the next thing we have to do is we have to create a new bucket for our contact form. So here click on this create bucket. And then here we have to put in our bucket name. So let's go with S3 static site second. Why I'm going with second? Because I already have a bucket with this name. Okay, and then when we scroll down, we have this block public access setting for this bucket. But we want our bucket to be publicly accessible. So let's uncheck this box. And when we scroll down, let's click on this box that we acknowledge that the current settings will affect the results. So yes, keep going, and we are leaving all the things to default, and then let's hit create bucket. And there we will have this message that says successfully created a bucket with the name S3 static site second. Next, we have to upload our website files that we created before into S3-static site into VS Code, right? So for that, what we are going to do is we are going to go into our bucket, and then here you will have this option upload. So click on this, and now over here you can either drag or drop your files, or you can add files from your folder. So let's click on this add files and then navigate to your project directory, and over here let's click on all of the files that we need and let's click open. And you will find here that we have all the files that we are going to upload, and then when you scroll down, hit upload, and then it has started uploading our files, and one by one it is giving us the message that succeeded, and now our upload process is done. So let's navigate back to our bucket, and now we have to set the bucket policy for public access. So click on this permission tab, and here scroll down to this bucket policy, and then click on this edit button, and over here we have to add the bucket policy. And we have to change our bucket name with the name that it has given over here. So let's grab this and replace this with our bucket name. And then let's scroll down and let's hit save changes. Now we have to configure bucket for static website hosting. So for that, we will go to this properties tab and then scroll down until you find the static website hosting. It is basically at the last, and then let's edit this. So click on edit, and here you have to click on enable, and then we have to provide the index document name. So it is going to be index.html, which we created for the contact form, right? And for error document, we will have fail.html file, and then scroll down and click on save changes. And when you scroll down again to static website hosting, you will have your bucket website endpoint. Basically the URL will be generated. So when you click on this and open it, you should have your contact form ready. So let's say continue to the site, and there we have our contact form up and running. So we are done with Amazon S3. Now we have to work with Amazon Lambda, AWS Lambda, and DynamoDB. We will start off by creating our Dynamo table. For it, in the search bar, let's type DynamoDB, and it should give you over here. Then let's click on this, and now we have to create a new DynamoDB table. So for that, let's navigate to this tables over here, and let's click on create table. And in the table name, we have to provide the name for our table. So let's say contact form entries, and in the partition key, let's have it as submission ID set to string. This will uniquely identify each form submission, and we are going to leave the rest to default. At last, let's click on this create table, and you can see over here that it is creating our table. Okay, so it is done. Now that we are done with creating our Dynamo database table, let's work with Lambda function. So in the console here, search for Lambda, and you should get it over here. Click on it, and here we are going to create a new function. So let's click on create function, and here you have to provide the function name. So let's go with Lambda function, and then let's hit create function. It is asking you if you want to invoke your function with the test event, choose test. But before that, we have to replace our DynamoDB table name with the DB name that we gave to our DynamoDB table. Go back to our index.js file present into this folder over here, and we have to replace this DB table name with the table name that we gave to our Dynamo table, contact form entries, correct? And let's save this file. Next, open the terminal and let me just clear all of this, and let's just minimize so you can see that what we are going to do right now. Here we are going to navigate to the Lambda function folder. If you are already present over there, perfect. Here we have to run the command zip-r lambda.zip and then space and then again dot or full stop, and then let's hit enter. This command is going to create a deployment package called lambda.zip that contains all the files and directories needed for our Lambda function. Now we will have to create another S3 bucket to upload our Lambda code. So for that, let's go back to our AWS services, and in here type in S3. Let's go to S3 and we are going to create a new bucket over here. So let's click on create bucket and let's name it as Lambda function, and then scroll down, leave the rest to default and then hit create bucket. So it says that bucket with the same name already exists, so let's have second over here also, and scroll down and let's hit create bucket. And in this bucket we will upload that lambda function.zip file that we created just a few seconds ago. So let's click on this upload and then click on this add files and go to lambda function, and here we have to upload this lambda.zip file. So let's click on open and then scroll down and let's say upload, and it is uploading our file over here. And once it is done, navigate back to your bucket name and then click on this lambda.zip file, and when you scroll down you will have this S3 URI which we will need. So let's grab this and paste it somewhere safe, okay? And now in the search over here, let's type in the lambda and click on this. We are going to upload our lambda.zip file from the Amazon S3. For that, what we have to do is we have to click on this lambda function which we created, and then when you scroll down you will find this button which says upload from. We have to upload from Amazon S3 location, and over here let's paste the URL that we copied and then let's hit save. After that, now we are going to test our backend code. So for that we have to create a test event. When you scroll down, here you will have this test tab. Click on this and we have to create a new event. So let's say test event. Okay, and then over here we have to provide the JSON for it, and over here let's paste the name, email, subject and a message, and scroll up and here you will have this test button. So let's click on this to test it, and you should get a successful message over here. And when you click on this details, you will find that it gave us the status code of 500 which said error submitting the form. And then when you scroll down, here you will see that it says access denied because we haven't created any role for the lambda function to associate it with the database yet. So let's modify the permission for lambda role. For that, we have to head back to the lambda service and then open the function that you created, and then go on to the configuration tab over here and then click on this permission tab and you will find this role name. So we have to go over here. So let's click on this and it will take us to the next page, and in here you will find this add permission button over here. Let's click on this and we have to click on attach policies, and then in the search we have to type for Amazon Dynamo DB, and here you will have this Amazon Dynamo DB full access. Click on this and let's click on add permission, and the policy was successfully attached to the role. Okay, now let's head back to the lambda function again and let's click on this test. Let's have a event name as test2 and replace this with the name and email, subject and a message. And once you have all these fields, let's scroll back above and then click on this test, and you will see that it has succeeded, and this time we have the status code of 200 which says form submitted successfully. Amazing, isn't it? But this is not where we are done. We want to fill in the form over here and have its data in our DynamoDB. For that, we are going to set up an API gateway and deploy the endpoint URL. We are going to set up our API gateway so that it can expose our Lambda function via a RESTful endpoint. This is going to allow our front-end application to submit the form data to our Lambda function. And in the search, let's search for API gateway and then let's hit API's gateway from the drop down list, and let's click on this create API, and when you scroll down you will find this REST API section, and over here let's click on this build option. We are going to create a new API and then you have to name your API. Let's go with contact form API and scroll down, and the API endpoint type should be regional. Let's click on create API, and now we have to create a resource. So for that you have to go to the resource and click on this create resource button, and it should have a default path for / and for resource name give it whatever you want to. I'm keeping it as submit, and then let's click create resource. But before that, let's check on this course, and for this the next thing we have to do is create a post method. So for that, let's scroll down and make sure that you are in your submit resource, and then let's click on create method. We are going to have method type of post, so let's click on it. It is going to be Lambda function, and scroll down, and here we have to click on what Lambda function we are going to use. So let's click on this, and here you will find all of the Lambda functions that are present in your service. So this is my function, so let's click on this and then let's hit create method, and yes, it has successfully created method post into our submit resource, and we have to enable the course for this resource. So let's click on enable course, and over here you have to select all of the options that are present, and then let's hit save. And now we have to deploy our API. So for that, let's click on deploy API. You have to choose the stage for it, so let's go with new stage, and for the stage name let's give it as dev, and then let's click deploy, and here you will have this invoke URL. We need this in our index.js file present in S3 static site folder. So let's grab this, and then let's navigate back to our S3 static site folder and open this index.js file. Let's close this, and we have to replace our invoke URL over here with the URL that we got, just like this. And let's now save this file, and we have to upload this file again to our S3 bucket. So let's navigate back to the AWS, and here search for S3. Open your bucket over here, and then we have to upload the file again. So click on upload. We have to add a file, so click on add file, and this index.js file present in S3 static site, not in Lambda function. So let's grab this index.js file and let's open it, and then scroll down and click on upload. And if you want to make sure that it has uploaded the file with the changes that we made, click on this index.js file, and here you will have this object URL. Let's click on this, and there you can check it over here that yes, it has uploaded the file with the changes that we have made. Okay, let's close this for now. Navigate back to your S3 bucket. Okay, and then navigate to this permission tab. Scroll down. You will have this course origin resource sharing. We have to edit this, and then over here let's click on this edit and paste the following information, that is this. Okay, so basically what is happening over here is allowed header is going to specify which headers are allowed in a pre-flight request. This star value allows all the headers. Then you have this allowed methods. This is going to be the list of HTTP methods that are allowed to access the resource. We have included just the post method, right? Then we have this allowed origin. This is going to define the origin that is allowed to access the resource. You have to replace this URL with the S3 URL that you got for your bucket. And for expose header, this is going to be the list of headers that are going to be exposed to the client application. But we have left this empty, meaning no headers are exposed. And then let's hit on save changes. And now we are done with everything. We have created a Lambda function, we have created API gateway and deployed the API. We have also created a Dynamo database table, right? We have created two S3 bucket, one for Lambda function, one for a static website which is hosted on this URL. Basically this, we have opened it over here, right? And now I am just hoping that this contact form works because we have done many changes into AWS services, right? So let's go to the contact form and let's try submitting this form. And here we have a name, email, subject and a message. And then let's click on submit. And it should work, please. And of course we got a error message over here. So after looking for the error from where it is coming from, I finally realized one silly mistake that we did is basically that we should have named it script.js, not index.js file. Okay, so please do change your index.js file and rename it to script.js. And also one thing I noticed is that we did not write code for success.html and fail.html files. So for that, we will just have a title for success.html as thank you, and we will link it to CSS. And over here we will have a div which has a heading thank you and a paragraph with your message has been submitted successfully. Same thing we will do for fail.html file, but in this case the h1 is going to be error. And for the p tag, we are going to have your message was not sent, please try again. And for h1 heading, we will have a class name for error. After doing these changes, what we have to do is we have to upload our files again. So let's open the S3 and over here head to your static site 2 website. So before we upload, let's do one thing. Let's delete all of these files one by one, just like this, and let's delete them. And it is asking us to write permanently delete. Yes, we do want it to delete it. Okay, and then let's close this and upload the files once again. Add the files and then over here select all of these files once again and then click open. Scroll down and upload it. And now once we are done uploading all of the files, let's go back to our contact form and refresh it, and yes, the message goes away. But let's try submitting our form. And here we have the name, email, subject and message, and then let's hit submit and it should take us to success.html page, and yes, it does. Let's now go back and bring in the Dynamo table over here, and then let's go to the table section. Click on the tables that we have and click on this explore table items, and you should have your items. And yes, we have this ABD, all of the things that I wrote right now. Okay, so that means our application, or you can say our contact form, is working perfectly fine. And then let's have a CloudWatch over here. Let's type in the CloudWatch in search bar, click on this and let's go to the logs, and then over here let's click on this browse logs group. So this is the Lambda function that we have, so click on this and close this, and when you click on this run query, it is going to give you all of the logs that it has, like values for log stream and everything. You can just check it over here. So basically that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did that, do not forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you have any doubts, please drop them into the comment section. I will be happy to help. You can find the link for its GitHub repository and for this lesson's documentation in the description. You can even join our Discord server and the link for it can be found in description. And I'll see you in the next one. Till then, bye bye and take care.